Hello guys, welcome to this video on the grouping problem. The need for grouping is very commonplace in our daily lives. For example, if you were watching the Football World Cup, you would have identified the national teams divided into groups. And how were they divided into groups? By some sort of a grouping algorithm. And suppose you live in a hostel dormitory with your friends and you would be divided into rooms. So how were you divided into rooms with your friends? By using a grouping algorithm. And suppose your teacher divided you and your friends into groups to do a group project. So how did she divide your classmates into groups? By using a grouping algorithm. As you saw, grouping is a very commonplace occurrence in our daily lives. Today we are going to take a look at an algorithm that divides n elements into k groups randomly. But before we proceed to the programming part, let's understand a little bit of theory. Okay guys, now we'll have a look at how we are going to solve the grouping problem. Let's say I had 6 people, namely A, B, C, D, E, and F. And the problem was to group these 6 people into 3 groups. So each group will have 2 individuals. Let me just write that down here. So now as each group has 2 individuals, we can also say that every 2 individuals will have the same group name or the same group ID. So using this logic, I am going to write down the group IDs in an order. So let's say A has the group ID of 1, B has group ID of 1. Now C has group ID of 2 and D has group ID of 2. E has group ID of 3 and F has group ID of 3. Now this is already a suitable grouping. So each team has 2 individuals and there are 3 groups. But the problem here is this is not random. So how are we going to randomize it? In order to randomize the groups, I will treat this collection as an array indexed from 0 to 5. 2, 3, 4 and 5. Now I will loop through this array. And for every iteration I will generate a random index from 0 to 5. So let that be called irand. And now I will swap the element at position I with the element at position iran. Now let's take a look at how that will work. For the first iteration, that is for I is equal to 0, I will generate a random index from 0 to 5. Let's say that the generated random index is 2. Now what happens is that I swap the element at the 0th index and the element at 2nd index. So let's do that. Now we move on to the second iteration, or that is for I value is equal to 1. I do the same process and I generate a random index. Now let's say the generated random index was also 1. So now what I do is just swap the element back into its own place. So as you can see, I will continue this process for the whole array. And finally, we will get a shuffled array with the elements divided into random groups. Now let's take a look at the programming part. Okay guys, the problem at hand is to divide these 6 people into 3 groups. So we have our n value as 6 and in k value as 3. Now because this is the number of people in total and this is the number of groups, so the number of people in one group will be n by k. Now let me just go and generate a new array called id. Now what this array will do is store the group ID of each of the names. So let's put in some values into this ID array. id.length I++. So now here I'm going to do something a bit funny. Now what might this code do? I will just print it out and show you. System.out.println arrays.toString and id. But before we print it out on some of your systems, if you did automatically get it, you would have to import java.util.arrays to be able to print out the corresponding array. So let me just print it out. As you can see here, this is the output. We have 0, 0, 1, 1, 2, 2. Now if you remember, even in the explanation part, I had done something similar. I had written all the group IDs in order from 1, 1, 2, 2 and 3 3. Here we start from 0, but it won't be of much of an issue. Now the only problem left is that we have to randomize the group IDs so that the teams are in random. How would we do that? Now in order to randomize the teams, we can simply just shuffle the group ID array. Now let's get doing that. For int I is equal to 0, I below id dot length, I plus plus. Now for every iteration I, we have to generate a random index from 0 to n minus 1. So iran is equal to math.random into n. Now this is not, though this is not the standard format how you write it, actually this one is, but if you substitute the values that we have in our problem, we get this sort of equation. So I cast it to an integer before assigning it. So, and even this part, right? And now we have to swap the element at index I and at index iran. So let's do that. Int temp is equal to id of I is equal to id of iran, and id of iran is equal to temp. Now let's get to the fun part, printing out the results. So system.out.println the names and the corresponding teams are, and we go with, let me put it on a new line, and we go system.out.println arrays dot toString. So we have the names list, and then we have our IDs list. So now let's just run this program and check the output. As you can see here, A and C have been assigned to group 1, D and E have been assigned to group 2, and B and F have been assigned to group 0. Now we can run this program multiple times and we get different results. Here we have a nice result, and then again and again and again.
So there you have it, guys. That's how you split almost anything into groups programmatically. And maybe the next time somebody has such a problem, you can solve it for them. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed watching this video, do like, share and subscribe. But more importantly, stay safe and stay happy. Until next time.